Hi everyone. This week's History Watch is a bit more serious. The world is on edge right now as the Putin regime viciously attacks the Ukrainian people day after day. They have killed mothers, babies, and pregnant women. They've attacked theatres, hospitals, and schools. Putin claims his special military operations are to liberate Ukrainians who he says want to be Russian and that he will denazify the country. But what's the truth behind the Kremlin-sanctioned propaganda? Why is Russia invading Ukraine? Well, to find out, we have to start in 1922. Welcome to History Watch, where we tell stories worth watching. After a bloody war between the communist Reds and the Tsar-supporting Whites, Russia was torn apart and reformed into the communist state of the USSR or Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was formally recognised by the UK in February 1922. Territories surrounding Russia had already been split with Poland in the Peace of Riga Treaty, which meant that as well as Russia, the Soviet Union also encompassed parts of Belarus, which remains a Soviet-style dictatorship today, Moldova, Kazakhstan, the Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia, which had invaded in the 40s, Central Asian countries, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, Trans-Caucasian countries, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia, and of course, Ukraine. It was absolutely mammoth, and apologies if I pronounced any of those countries wrong. The Soviet Union was ruled over by a one-party state, the Bolsheviks, originally led by Vladimir Lenin and later, more famously to the modern-day memory, by Joseph Stalin. They were fiercely communist, and between the end of World War II, in which they were uneasily aligned with the Allies, and the late 80s, they were engaged in a Cold War with the Western world. During this time, both sides had one finger permanently over the nuclear button, children were taught how to shelter from a bomb at school, and people were constantly prepared for annihilation. Things would begin to change when Soviet rule fell to Mikhail Gorbachev, who was determined to improve the USSR's stagnant economy and fix its global relationships. He began by ending the Stalin-era ban on books and films, disbanding the secret police, and allowing somewhat limited journalism and freedom of speech. He also encouraged foreign investment in an attempt to bring money into the country. His attempts ultimately bore little fruit, and without the strict social policies that had prevented the impoverished Soviet people from rebellion, things began to change rapidly. Gorbachev watched as other communist states around Europe began to, as he put it, crumble like a dry saltine cracker in just a few months. Poland had a revolution in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell in November of that same year, and that same month the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia overthrew that country's communist government. On the 7th of April 1990, a new law was passed allowing a republic to secede from the USSR if more than two-thirds of its residents voted for it in a referendum. But by March 1991, a majority voted to preserve the union, bolstering Gorbachev's leadership. Until August that year, when a coup resulted in Gorbachev losing all semblance of power, and very quickly led to Lithuania and Latvia declaring independence. On the 26th of December 1991, Ukraine's secession was recognised, and the Soviet Union was effectively disbanded. The end. Or not. Sadly. Russia and Ukraine remained close, and as Russia felt threatened by an ever-growing European Union and NATO, they coerced Ukraine into a treaty in 1994 whereby Ukraine sacrificed any right to nuclear weaponry in return for a guarantee that Russia would never invade. Liar, liar, Russian pants on fire. In 2000, Vladimir Putin was elected President of Russia, a man with vocal disdain for the independence of former Soviet states, who openly longs for the days when Russia ruled the East with an iron fist. Yay. In 2004, Russia, allegedly, poisoned Ukrainian electoral candidate Viktor Yushchenko, and in November, pro-Russian candidate Viktor Yanukovych was elected, despite election observers accusing him of vote rigging. The peaceful Orange Revolution followed in a 2-month period, with the Ukrainian Supreme Court nullifying the election and declaring Yushchenko the winner. Putin accused the Orange Revolutionaries of being part of an American plot to destabilize Russia. Protests erupted in 2013 after Russophile Yanukovych, who was now president, refused to sign a declaration of friendship with the EU, opting to preserve Russian ties. He was forced to flee the country, with parliament voting to depose him, despite leaders in Russian-speaking eastern Ukraine remaining loyal. Russian state-controlled media portrayed the entire crisis as having been
created by Ukrainian government
and represented the protesters as
fascists, Nazis and anti-Russian racists.
Putin used the unrest to sanction an invasion of the Crimea region of Ukraine in 2014 and supported uprisings in the Donbass region. The annexation of Crimea led to a new wave of Russian nationalism, with large parts of the Russian neo-imperial movement aspiring to annex more land from Ukraine. Fast forward to 2021, and Putin began to deploy troops in the hundreds of thousands to the border of Ukraine. He denied ferociously he had ambitions to invade, whilst continuing to liberally accuse Ukraine of fascism and Nazism. In February 2022, Putin gave a speech in which he claimed that Ukraine had never been a real country, and that it was in fact part of Russia. In Putin's alternate history, Ukraine is merely a bit of Russia that was carved out as a republic by Lenin. He criticised former Soviet leaders for giving Ukraine Russian land, and Ukraine for emulating Western countries since its independence. Ukraine would probably like to point out that whilst their history is undeniably entwined, their capital, Kiev, was founded centuries before Moscow, they have their own distinct language and customs, and that if it is true that they have lacked a stable statehood, it's largely down to Mother Russia failing to keep her nose out of Ukraine's business. On the 21st of February, Putin announced that Russia would recognise the ethnic Russian regions in the Donbass as independent Russian states, effectively declaring war on Ukraine. Later the same evening, he announced peacekeeping maneuvers for the Russian army in Ukraine. This was the beginning of the lie which he hoped would justify his invasion to the people of Russia. Putin's invasion of Ukraine has been condemned worldwide by not just Western countries, but Russia's allies in China and neutral powers such as Switzerland. Seriously, how evil do you have to be to make Switzerland get off the fence? Ukrainian people are suffering daily from gunfire, bombings and aerial attacks, but they are fighting back. I mean, have you seen the videos of farmers stealing Russian tanks? These people are amazing, and the rest of the world has sanctioned Russia, grinding its economy to a low that sees its currency worth under half a penny, and the Russian people, though bombarded with propaganda by its fascist government, are beginning to see through Putin's lies, with sadly illegal protests taking place across Russia. Russia has now banned social media and made it an imprisonable offence of up to 15 years to criticise the war. Yeah, definitely sounds like they're defending democracy to me. This video glosses over a lot of things to try and streamline 100 years of history into one video, and I do urge you to read more about the history of this conflict and why it's happened. Putin is a power-hungry monster, determined to return the world to the days of Soviet domination. He will fail. And that was a story truly worth watching. Slava Ukraini.